Hello and good morning. It's New Year's Eve of 2023. I just want to talk a little bit today about getting in shape for backpacking. Um, you see videos pop up every now and then about that. I've been watching just to see what they say, and because I think it's kind of funny, I've been watching people talk about getting in shape for older people for backpacking. But what I'm going to talk about today is just in general for anybody that wants to get in shape for backpacking. Number one, I think you need to consider what type of backpacker you are. I'm an ultralight backpacker, and I define ultralight as being your base weight is less than 10 pounds. So my packs are generally very, very light, even when I go out in the winter and I'm above 10 pounds. It's usually not by much. So ultralight versus traditional backpacking. If you are somebody that wants to carry a total load of like 30, 40, even 50 pounds into the woods, yeah, you're gonna have to worry a lot about getting into shape because that is a shit ton of weight and it's a pain in the ass to hike with, depending on the terrain. I'm in western Pennsylvania, northwestern Pennsylvania, and if I go out on these trails around here with that weight, I really got to worry about being in shape. So I want to start with keep in mind that backpacking, especially if it's ultralight, is just basically walking through the woods. So you're kind of getting in shape to just walk with hopefully just a little weight on your back and you're not carrying cast iron skillets and things like that. The other thing to consider with ultralight versus traditional is whether you're putting in big miles or you're just hiking a few miles to go in because you want to camp and have all the comforts of home when you camp. That's very different. I think what I'm going to talk about today kind of gets you in shape for that as well. But when I go out, I like to do bigger miles. 20 miles a day feels great to me, and getting up the next day and doing almost 20 feels fantastic, and that's over roots and rocks and some inclines here in western Pennsylvania. So what I'm going to be talking about today, obviously, is from my perspective of bigger miles, being an ultralight backpacker, but again, I think it applies to other things as well. Number one thing, instead of concentrating on getting in shape for backpacking, just concentrate on being in shape in general. If you're somebody that is, say, like in shape, and let's define that as you're not carrying a lot of body fat, you work out on a regular basis, you're probably in pretty decent shape for backpacking as is. So let's talk about just being in shape a little bit and keeping that perspective as being in shape for backpacking. Number one thing I think is begins with diet. You don't eat a lot of junk food, and if you have a good diet, you're not going to be fat. If you're carrying around a lot of body fat, you're going to have problems with anything where you try to do something that's a little athletic, even if it's just a walk in the woods. That's going to be hard. So number one is diet. I'm not going to do a big thing with diet. My thing with diet is we all know what a healthy diet is. If you're about to eat something, you have to question whether it's healthy or not. It's probably not healthy. So have a healthy diet. Number two, I think is fantastic for backpacking is if you run on a regular basis. Let's say 3 times a week, 3 to 5 miles each time. You're probably in pretty great shape to go out there and hit a trail. Running, I think, is just fantastic in terms of overall health. It is very different than walking because now you have impact. And if you ever had problems running but not walking, you understand what that is. Running is fantastic. If you're somebody that can't run for any reason, you really do have a physical limitation. At times, I've had injuries where I cannot run. There's a lot of great machines in a gym. My favorite machine to use other than running because there is no impact is something called an ARC trainer. That's ARC as in Charlie, ARC trainer. I think those are fantastic. There's also elliptical machines, and you can mix in there Stairmasters or the step mills, rowing machines. But for me, the ARC trainer has been fantastic. Outside of that, in terms of weight training, strength training, I broke my workouts down years ago, and you see all this weight equipment behind here because I used to be a very serious weightlifter. I threw in something called the Scottish Heavy Events. I used to weigh almost 300 pounds, got out of it just because I wanted to do something different. I wasn't injured, and I ended up losing over 100 pounds, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But so I broke my workouts after I got done with weightlifting into a couple things for strength training. I want to do a pushing movement every workout, a pulling movement every workout, a back movement every workout, and an abdominal movement every workout. So for me, my pushing exercises look like dips, dumbbell benches, bench press. You can throw push-ups in there. Pulling for me, I'm a big fan of doing pull-ups, but you can also use a curling motion for that. The pull-down machines are fantastic for that. For back, I use this thing over here. If I don't know if you see in the camera, I do hyper extensions for that. Straight-legged deadlifts for that. You can do something called a good morning for that. Abs, I'm a big fan of Roman chairs because I don't have to do a lot to get a lot out of it. You can do crunches on a ball, regular crunches, sit-ups. So push, pull, back, and abs for all of that. After that, I think stretching becomes really important, having a regular stretching routine to prevent injury. But also, when you start working out and you're in shape, anybody that is watching this and doesn't already knows, you find weaknesses in your body where you have to do certain stretches to prohibit those weaknesses from becoming an injury. So you discover that pretty quickly. So my stretching routine looks pretty regular. One thing I'm a big fan of that is kind of stretching, but more kind of like, I guess, a therapy, is hanging upside down. So I've got a teeter inversion table. It's behind the camera right now that I use several days a week. And what that does is, it's known for taking the compression off your spine, but the other thing I find it does is it does stretch out your knees and so when I do it with the knee, if I have problems in my knees, if they're feeling achy, I'll hang and it kind of stretches that knee out and decompresses it, and I feel a lot less. The other place I notice is in my hips, and I can feel things. I've had hip issues in the past, and I'll feel those things kind of stretch and move around as I'm hanging upside down like that. So before I wrap this up, let me jump back to how I lost that weight. Being in shape and weight loss, there's no secrets to it. You can use a certain technique if it makes you feel good, if it accomplishes your goal and you need some type of discipline. Like people that do a certain type of diet, like a keto diet, the Mediterranean diet, blah, blah, blah. But the way I lost the weight was I just ate less and I moved more. So when I was lifting, I was eating a ton of food and I was not moving like a cardio person. I never did cardio. If I did cardio, I might lose weight, and I had to keep my weight up for lifting and the throwing. So think about diet in terms of this. Eat less, move more. And then come up with what you need to do to be able to eat less and move more. Eating less for me eventually led into being a vegetarian. I recently added meat back into my diet. I'm not a scientist about it. I don't meal prep or anything like that, but I know when I'm eating too much, and I know when I'm eating junk food. But if you need some type of other discipline to help you accomplish that, by all means do it. But I want the freedom personally to be able to eat any kind of food whenever I want, but I still want to have the discipline to eat healthy. In terms of movement, decide how you're going to move based on what we just talked about. You do those things, you can get in backpacking shape real easy. Backpacking is just walking through the woods. I'll add this before I end it. The one oddball thing about backpacking is that you are moving generally on uneven ground. And if you're only running, especially if you're only using machines for cardio, that instability and having to stabilize yourself on rocks and roots and uneven ground can affect things like your ankles and your knees and maybe your hips. I noticed that a long time ago when I first tried trail running. I'd get done running the trail and my knees and ankles would hurt. They'd be more sore than they normally would with road running. So you can add into a regular workout exercise where you have to stabilize your knees or your ankles. So for me, that means balancing on one foot on I have like a little wobbly thing. I don't know if you can see it over there. and I'll put weight on my back, just a little weight on a bar, trying to balance myself. I'll set a timer for 30 seconds. I'll just look at the timer, I'll do that. I'll do one-legged, straight-legged deadlifts. Anything that has where you have to stabilize your knee and your ankle in balance. And I've noticed that when I go out backpacking, that my knees and ankles are absolutely fine. So if you have any questions, you can add them down in the comments, but there's just some general things with getting in shape for backpacking. It's really not that big of a deal. There's no secret science behind it. You just be in shape and you'll be in shape for backpacking. Happy New Year.